What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. You know, a lot of people talk about just like champions that are good in SoloQ, and the thing is that there's always kind of like this competitive tier list of like the champions that are the best, but the thing is that those champions tend to get banned out or counterpicked or at least expected a lot more than most of the other champions. But there's still a lot of really good options that you can take a look at and find for champions that are good in SoloQ, and a big part of what dictates the absolute top champions is pro play. And personally, I really like to take a look at the champions that are great in SoloQ but not so great in the pro level for a couple reasons. So first off, this type of champion is going to get banned almost never, really, you know. A lot of the top champions, you just can never play them because they get banned all the time, and that's very counterintuitive if you're trying to play them in SoloQ to gain LP. As well, these types of champions, something that I really think is underappreciated is the fact that champions that aren't as good at the competitive level are significantly less likely to get nerfs. And as a result, these are great champions to invest time in, get good at, master, and climb the ladder on. And for today, the list that we're taking a look at, none of the champions on our list today were played in the playoffs or regionals in both LCS, NA and EU, LCK, and as well LPL, which means that overall these champions are also quite unlikely to show up at Worlds, outside of maybe some surprise pocket picks, but they're all definitely still really successful options for SoloQ, and it's kind of interesting to take a look at why that might be. And big thanks to Pro Guides for helping us out with this video. They do a lot of really awesome content on their website, and they have a free trial so you can check it out. You don't have to hear it from me. There's going to be a link in the description, and let's get started. So first up on our list today, we have Pantheon, who's one of the most notorious lane stompers and early game dominators in League of Legends. You know, his kit's all about winning early duels, and then of course using his ultimate to gank other lanes, and then turn his own advantage into a team-wide advantage on the rest of the map, which makes him crazy good at taking down teams in a normal ranked play. But at the LCS level, where players know how to avoid his early laning power through lane swaps, and play around his ultimate, he tends to just fall a little bit short. Pro players also communicate insanely well, and the second a Pantheon goes missing from the top lane, you can immediately see the enemy team reacting and just changing their playstyle to make sure they avoid giving any kills to him, at least at the pro level. Interestingly though, Pantheon might actually be due for a rework in the future according to Riot, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. Definitely not in Season 6, maybe not even in Season 7 either, but overall he's going to be just an awesome champion to play up in the top lane in SoloQ. Next up, we have Sona support, and she's actually a support champion that's seen quite a bit of competitive play in the past recently, but actually dropped out of favor in the playoffs and in the most recent version of competitive. And Sona offers a ton of sustain to her team, you know, alongside the super powerful engage from her ultimate, which makes her really strong against uncoordinated teams because you can land those just crazy crescendos and just the rest of your team's gonna follow up and you clean up the kills. And that kind of thing doesn't happen as often in the pro level because it's a lot rare that you'll catch a group of players off guard, bunched up together, and as well, Sona's big strengths comes in her laning phase, which is again something that kind of gets avoided at the pro level because of 2v1s, and so it doesn't entirely make sense to build a team composition around Sona. And she's also really squishy, which is something that pro players kind of abuse in certain scenarios. A popular strategy as support is to roam to the mid lane in the early game and try to snowball your mid laner head as well, but Sona doesn't apply pressure as well as some of the other popular support champions before level 6, which is a little bit of a drawback for competitive play, but in SoloQ you're not really going to be roaming before level 6 anyway, right? She's not weak by any means at all though. She's really powerful, especially since she has a dominant laning phase where she gets tons of poke, tons of sustain, and just straight up dominates pretty much most 2v2 lanes. And she's a great threat in the ranked environment and an awesome choice for players trying to play SoloQ. Next up, we've got a little bit of a crazy pick actually, something that's kind of off meta, but is something that has been really rising in popularity in SoloQ, and it's kind of like showing its dominance almost, which is Aurelion Soul Jungle. And despite him kind of having like crazy win rates in the jungle since his release, a lot of people sort of shy away from playing Aurelion Soul because he's got a little bit of an awkward kit, which does take a little bit of time to get used to get the hang of as a jungler. His biggest weakness in the jungle is his first clear, and against a coordinated group of players at the professional level, that's a really significant weakness that just throws champions under the bus, and he definitely gets punished way too hard to get a good start to have a lot of impact in the game, at least at the professional level. But Aurelion Sol actually has a ton of impact on a game throughout his ability to quickly roam around the map, deal huge damage, and overall does a great job of carrying games all by yourself as a jungler. And although his weaknesses kind of rule him out as a viable jungler in the LCS, he's actually quite a terror pick in SoloQ. You do have to play a little bit safe in the first clear, but once you've locked down your jungle item, Aurelion Sol becomes just a powerhouse that is monstrous to deal with while also being pretty tanky too, and he's got a lot of good options, great ganks, versatility, and pretty much everything you might need for a great jungler for SoloQ. Next up we have Draven, who's an AD carry who's popular with kind of one-trick pony players, I guess you could say, because he's got some pretty interesting mechanics that are really fun, and he's got a lot of power to carry games by himself as well, with nothing but raw damage. And a talented Draven player is, really frustrating to play against because it's just so hard to win trades against him. He just does so much more raw damage than other AD carry champions, especially in the early game laning phase. So although Draven might take a little bit more time to learn compared to other AD carry champions, for the players who do take the time, he ends up being really strong in SoloQ because he just dominates the lane, snowballs like crazy, and then outputs crazy damage in team fights. Compared to other AD carries in competitive play, he's a bit lacking in versatility, and as well, when it comes to the laning phase, being strong at laning isn't exactly something that's that relevant in competitive play anyway, but overall, he does a great job of dominating games in SoloQ, and we also really wanted to include a champion for every single role, so Draven was our pick for AD carry. Our next champion is one that we actually talked about in the previous version of the list, which is Annie Mid. And again, she's still played really often in SoloQ and is really hard to deal with and just carries games like crazy. She's a really great champion to use in SoloQ, one of my personal favorites, I gotta be honest here. I am a dirty Annie main. But we don't want to spend too much time talking about Annie because we did talk about her in the previous version of our list a couple months back, but essentially the kind of low range and lack of versatility and mobility make her a little bit too exploitable for competitive play, but her burst damage combos are just awesome in SoloQ, and burst damage is something that just really just wrecks people in SoloQ and is a great option for carrying games, and Annie's going to be a great option for a mid laner. Next up on our list we have Tryndamere, and he's probably the simplest one to justify honestly on this list. Tryndamere loves to do two things: 1v1 opponents and split push, which is a huge problem for a lot of players in ranked SoloQ because people just don't know how to deal with his endless split push. So they end up sending two people to deal with him, or they send one person to deal with him, and that guy just dies because you can just dive him with your ultimate, which means that your team's going to be fighting 4v3, or you're just going to be getting free towers, free objectives over and over again. Honestly, even if you don't manage to take any towers, you still get a ton of advantages to your team when you split push properly, and more often than not your team is just going to snowball, steamroll over the enemies. And overall, the counter to Tryndamere's strategy revolves around having a lot of good coordination and communication and kind of just knowing how to duel Tryndamere. He also fares quite poorly when it comes to 2v1 lanes and when he gets starved of all that gold and CS in the early game. And overall, he does a great job for SoloQ, but his weaknesses are a little bit too much for him to deal with at the competitive level. Overall, that's just about going to wrap up our list. Definitely let us know in the comments below if you thought there was some champions that maybe we missed. We just chose our favorites, so there's definitely some alternative options as well. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.